And members, before I give the call to the Hon Sue Ellery.
I'm keen.
An important part of a member's parliamentary career is their valedictory speech. Therefore, there are some things that are part of our practice in this place that we follow. The first is that the member's contribution will not be timed. And secondly, we, as part of our practice, listen to the member's contribution in silence. The Hon Sue Ellery.
Thanks, President. I can assure honourable members and guests that you're not in for a long night. President, there are two versions of this speech. I was raised in the Catholic faith. Much to my late mother's chagrin, I abandoned that around 15. But some traditions linger. When very young, we were taught that we all have a good angel on one shoulder and a bad angel on the other, and that our struggle in life is to listen only to the good angel. As I said, there are two versions of this speech. One version where I reveal every political secret and name every numbnut I've ever had to deal with. That speech was written by the bad angel. And while it would be more entertaining for everyone here and hugely cathartic for me, President, that is not the speech that I will give. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but today the good angel won. I've been hugely privileged to be a Member of Parliament for 24 years, to be a minister in 2 Labor governments, to hold leadership positions and to leave on my own terms and at a time chosen by me. Elections remind us that last bit is not always a combination available to all who run for or enter Parliament. I am hugely grateful for that privilege. I owe so many for that privilege, and this is my chance to say thank you. I come from a long line of Bolshie women, and I want to acknowledge my late mother, my grandmothers, Marjorie Maud and Alice, for the Take No Prisoners DNA. The very public nature of political life means that the whole family shares in the ups and downs. Whether they like it or not, they can get drawn into whatever the issue of the day is. Thank you to my whole extended family for your support, many of whom are here today. My dad, Peter, my brothers, Simon and Nick, my sister-in-law, Liana, my niece and nephews, and what I refer to as the Cousins Focus Group, who are never shy about sharing their views. Greatest thanks, of course, to my husband Peter for his unfailing support. We're about to spend more time together than we ever have before. And that is slightly daunting for both of us. I did hear him tell the neighbours that he might be looking for a safe house. Before I came to Parliament, I worked in the union movement for what was then the Miscellaneous Workers Union, is now United Workers Union. There is a bit of a narrative that working in the Labor movement, that working for unions is not a real job. And that narrative bores me to tears, President, and it's wrong. I worked for a number of unions. What was then the Municipal Officers Association became the ASU, the Australian Workers Union, the Nurses Union, and for a group of hospital-based unions before I worked for United Workers Union. They were great jobs. I had to understand a broad range of industry settings and their place in our economy, the training and workforce development needs of those particular industries. I had to develop negotiation, advocacy, paralegal skills, communication, media management and campaign skills across public and private industries, and how to assist union members develop their voice to negotiate with the same power and voice that others at the table had. They were real skills in real jobs, and I'm grateful for those jobs. I was supported by UWU to seek pre-selection to Parliament, and I am both proud and grateful for that. The proposition from some on the other side that working for an industry body, for example, like the Property Council, is a real job, but working in a union is not, is ideological nonsense. I'm grateful to have been a member of Labor caucuses over my time. I served as President of Caucus, and Caucus elected me to the Ministry and shadow opposition positions, and I thank them for that. Over 2 Labor governments, I worked with 4 premiers, Jeff Gallop, Alan Carpenter, Mark McGowan and Roger Cook, and I worked with Eric Ripper as Leader of the Opposition. Each was different, but I thank each of them for the opportunities that they gave me. Now, President, I may stray into a breach of standing orders by referring to premiers and others by their first names and not their parliamentary titles, and I beg your forgiveness for that. When I first entered Parliament, I was keen to learn, and I'm grateful for those who went before me who assisted me, and to those who were ministers when I first entered. I took Cheryl Davenport's seat, and she's here today, when I entered, and she was someone who taught me a lot when I was a political staffer and who demonstrated that real policy change is possible if you are determined enough and able to build alliances. Sheila McHale and Jim McGuinty were ministers when I was a rookie, and both gave me opportunities to learn the ropes and demonstrate what I could contribute. A word of advice to newbies: go looking and ask for jobs from ministers that you have some connection with or whose portfolios are of interest to you. Sheila McHale asked me to chair a statutory review of the Disability Services Act, and that gave me the opportunity to travel the state with Commission staff and the then Commission Board Chair, Barry McKinnon, meeting people with disabilities and their families. Now, a sidebar, Barry McKinnon knew my father, Peter Ellery, who had been a member of the Liberal Party and the CEO of the Chamber of Minerals and Energy in the 1980s. Barry hadn't realised the connection, but on this particular day we were at Albany Airport for about an hour or so as our plane was delayed, so we'd been chatting away. He clicked that Peter Ellery was my father and said, "But he's so nice." Despite that dagger to the heart, chairing that statutory review was a very valuable learning exercise for me, and I'm grateful to Sheila for that opportunity. I had the opportunity to be Parliamentary Secretary to Jim McGuinty when he was Attorney-General and Minister for Health. This was a sensational opportunity for me to learn it all. He included me in every agency meeting, budget preparation meetings, health reform meetings, asked me to represent him with particular stakeholder groups and policy areas, and I handled all the Attorney-General legislation in this place. The very first bill that I handled was a cannabis reform bill, and it was a baptism of fire up against Peter Foss. Now, I think Peter wanted to reveal whether or not I had ever used it myself, but unlike him, he asked the question so loosely I was able to avoid it. Sidebar again, all was revealed years later when the now Premier revealed that he had, and so all ministers were then asked the direct question as we walked into Cabinet one Monday morning, and I had to answer it directly, and then had to ring my dad to alert him. Peak gratitude goes to the two premiers I worked most closely with, Mark and Roger, as we worked together in opposition in the hard years to get us to record-breaking success in 2017, a level of success we have just outdone in our third term, increasing the numbers of Labor members elected in both the Assembly and the Council over the numbers that we had achieved in 2017. Opposition, President, is hard. Arguably, it's character building, but that's all it is. The work that you do in your time in opposition determines your success. Do no work, you will not succeed. Being constantly distracted by leadership threats or internal feuding might feel like work, but it's not the work you need to do to be successful. We worked hard, really hard, and to be frank, I haven't seen an opposition since then work anywhere near as hard. Eric laid the basic building stones. Mark McGowan was hungry to win. He left no hand unshaken at every event. He did hard policy work and demanded that of his team. He took us to the 2013 election knowing we could set ourselves up for 2017, and we used every single day between 2013 and 2017 to ensure our success. There are noises from time to time from the other side about a renewed work ethic, but I see no capacity to curtail the policy extremists in the Liberal Party, nor to limit the power of he who still influences pre-selections and key positions. And my advice is you won't win if you don't fix that. By far, the most challenging time for me in government was during the pandemic, when I was Minister for Education and Training. Mark's leadership during that time was outstanding. The team he put around him to guide our policy settings was strong and competent and unfazed. Very tough decisions had to be made and implemented. Keeping schools open was controversial for some. Our Premier was absolutely clear that we would not close schools. Unlike most of the other states and territories, WA schools remained open. The school sector came together under the outstanding leadership of then Director General Lisa Rogers, and I think it was her military training in logistics that stood her in great stead for that period. And schools adapted and adapted again and adapted again. For everyone, it was very long hours and enormous pressure. I lost count of how many times I was asked in media conferences about the availability of hand sanitiser, whether education staff should be in full PPE, and about RATS tests. It did, though, highlight the complex role of schools, not just as places of learning, but as safe places for those children whose homes are not safe, as critical economic infrastructure so parents can work, and as sources of information for the community. The basis of good public health policy is to strike a balance between management of the spread of the disease against the economic and social consequences of that management. And WA schools were a clear example of that. While complex, once explained, most ordinary West Australians grasped the COVID response and indeed rewarded it in unparalleled numbers at the 2021 state election. There were those, including in here, who chose not to accept that the greater good should prevail if it meant any temporary infringement of personal liberties. Now, most of that is driven by fear or anger about something else. Some of it was driven by base politicking to create some kind of alliance of the disaffected, and that last one is dangerous. During that period, WA saw two people daily, Mark as Premier and Roger Cook as Minister for Health, and the public came to know Roger as the Premier's unflappable partner. It's no secret, President, it was clear for all to see on TV, that I was distressed when Mark decided to step down as Premier. I stood with him and some of my colleagues in the corridor and then a ridiculously small tea room just outside the Cabinet meeting room, trying to convince him not to go. Just a few weeks ago, when I signed my resignation letter as Minister on the Monday after the election, I said to Premier Cook that I was acutely aware that when he became Premier, he did not need to keep me on as Minister. Indeed, it may have been easier for him not to. It might have given him greater flexibility in how he shaped his Cabinet. But he did keep me on, and I'm grateful for that, and pleased not just to say it to him directly a few weeks ago, but to put it on the public record today. I was pleased to work closely with him and the party's Central Campaign Committee to see WA Labor's resounding success on March the 8th. If I can touch just briefly on the most recent campaign. Such amazing results by so many. Of course, there are lessons to be learnt, and I know the new Cabinet and caucus are well aware of those. I'm grateful for the chance to chair that campaign committee and to directly help out in a couple of local campaigns and to drop in on many others during the formal campaign. So many party members and volunteers, some of whom are here today, and supporters working so hard. Really great new candidates who didn't let the craziness and brutality of 2 weeks of pre-poll send them completely bonkers. In South Metro, that Lisa O'Malley in Bicton, Kim Giddens in Bateman, Stephen Pratt in Jandakot, Jeff Baker in South Perth and Dr Jags in Riverton did so well gives me joy. In Southern River, Terry Healy is the best direct voter contact campaigner I have ever worked with in 24 years. He's a machine. In Fremantle, not only did the best candidate win, but the best campaign won. Simone's team were great. Beyond South Metro, Lisa Munday in Dawesville is a legend, and I bow to her tenacity. In the North East, the tiny but mighty Lansdale team will always be dear to me, though I think the hybrid model, as the candidate might have called it, of staffing booths nearly sent me batty at one point. Now, I know, President, I'll have offended some by not mentioning them individually, and I'm sorry for that. Really, I could name all 46 of the Assembly's successful campaigns, because that number 46 gives me joy too. To those who campaigned hard but did not get over the line, I say thank you for giving it your all. This business can be heartbreaking, and I do acknowledge how hard it is to get up and carry on after a loss. I'm also grateful, President, for the friends I have on the inside to vent to when the crazy stuff that happens in government happens. That crazy stuff happens every day. Being able to vent is important. There's one of those friends who on more than one occasion I've told there are no friends in politics. That is true to a certain extent, but not completely. Rita and Daniel, Simone and Amber and John are those friends on the inside who I can vent to, I have vented to, and I will miss venting to as their work life continues to be full of those crazy moments, and hopefully mine does not. We each, President, know way too much about each other's strengths and weaknesses and have spent way too much time doing character analysis, as we like to call it, on others. Between us, we provided that bad angel with a lot of material about political secrets and numbnuts we have known, none of which will be shared in this speech, and there's more than one person listening or reading this who will be grateful for that. I'm also grateful, President, for the hard-working and dedicated public servants that I've worked with over the years. From the top, the Public Sector Commissioner, who I first worked with when she was Director-General of Education, to a range of other Directors-General, one of whom is in the gallery today, and senior executives in the agencies in my portfolios and more broadly across government. The public is well served in WA by our public sector leaders and those on the front line of service delivery. Many of those I've worked with have been kind enough to send me messages on my retirement, and I thank them for that. I think it's fair to say that no public servant ever left the room wondering what my views were, and I'm grateful for their patience with my impatience. But together, we got a lot done. We delivered good services. We fixed problems, which is what governments should do. We implemented great election commitments, and we changed policy settings to make WA a better place to live and work. To the stakeholder groups that I've worked with as well, I'm grateful for your professionalism and willingness to work with government to achieve policy outcomes. I've made it my business to engage regularly, not just when things get sticky, and to tell them directly when I can't deliver what they're seeking. As Minister for Education, I regularly held education forums across the state with school leaders, P&C reps and their local MPs to understand what was important at each of their schools. I would start each session by saying, I think it's important that I hear from you directly, but I know that by the time we're about 2/3 around the table, I'm going to regret saying that. And inevitably, at about the 2/3 mark around the table, I would start to regret all the issues being raised that needed to be resolved. But government is about fixing problems, and schools are the heartbeat of local communities. President, I've worked with many outstanding staff in my ministerial offices and my electorate office. There are too many to name, but to my chiefs of staff over the years, Kathy, Liz, who flew from Melbourne to be here today, Jess and Kirsten, thank you so much for the skills that you brought, the hours that you did, the loyalty to me and the policy professionalism to whatever portfolio we had. To the executive officers who I've worked with, most recently Bernadine and Isha, so bossy but so good, and I'm delighted to see them both here today. To the admin teams that they led as well, thank you. To the policy and media staff, there are too many to thank personally, but I'm going to risk it and name some of you. Em, Rod, Donna, Phoebe, Clint, Kendall, Wendy, Kylie, Amy, Chris with a K, Jess, Carly and Maria, and the great secondments from various agencies. Alison, Marcia, Nicola and Emma, thank you so much. In my electorate office, I've been so lucky to have a stream of young people who wanted part-time work while they completed their studies before going on to run the world. And then there were the rocks like Julie Krober, who's been with me for about 22 of the 24 years, and who with Lindsay and Rashmi are in my current electorate officer team. Particularly in the hard times of opposition, electorate office staff are the voice, the boots on the ground, whatever expression that fits, to be the face of the alternate government. I've worked with some outstanding women in my electorate office during this time, and even the occasional man. I'm grateful for your hard work and support. To my colleagues here in the Legislative Council, thank you for the honour of being your leader, both in opposition and in government. I know there have been many times when I've tested your loyalty and commitment, but I'm grateful for the support you continue to give, and I know the next Legislative Council cohort will thrive under Stephen and Jackie's leadership. Now, I know it's shocking, and again I'm pushing that bad angel away, but sometimes the conventions and rules of the Legislative Council are not understood by Cabinet colleagues from the Assembly, even premiers and their staff. And that can be frustrating for the Legislative Council leadership. You too can vent to me anytime you need to. I'm grateful to have worked with many highly competent and patient parliamentary and chamber staff over the last 24 years. Across this precinct, there are so many good people making this place work. Surprisingly to me, when I sat to think about it, the bit I grew to enjoy the most in here was the rhythm of getting a piece of legislation through the parliament. Intellectually, the challenge of understanding complex policy and drafting in bills most often outside my portfolio was exhausting, but I do think I might have become a legislating geek because I did like it. Some people know I toy with writing a crime novel based in the Legislative Council. There have been some very unusual and shocking events associated with this chamber over those 24 years, and some very colourful characters. But lest the bad angel take over again, I won't dwell on those. Overwhelmingly, the staff, from the clerk of the parliament down, through everyone who makes this place function, have always been helpful and patient and professional. The other element that I've dealt with over 24 years is that tricky but symbiotic relationship with the media. Now, a strong democracy needs both politicians and the media. And though the tension between the two might make it seem as though we hate them and they hate us, actually we don't. I thank them for their professionalism, and I'm grateful I won't need to dread tomorrow's headline ever again. Finally, my advice to those in the next and future parliaments, rules to live by really. All public policy did not begin when you were elected. You don't know everything. Some of you will come into this place knowing hardly anything at all. The trick is to leave knowing a little bit more. Don't waste time. Your time in here moves fast, so make decisions and follow through to implement them properly. Don't be a rat. Even in the toughest times, find something to laugh about. Do what you say you're going to do, and if you can't explain why, don't wait till they catch you not doing it. Apply the pub test, the front page of the paper test, the social media test. If in doubt about how it will play out on those platforms, don't do it. So, President, as my retirement loomed, some have asked whether I had any regrets. I've had a million regrets along the way. Each of us can always do better. Of course, I've had too many sleepless 2 a.m. reflections that I should have taken path X or spoken differently to Y. But I don't beat myself up about it. There's too much still to do. I look forward to what's still to do for me, and I thank the people of Western Australia for the privilege of being a member of the Parliament.